Hey y'all, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Tim.
Hey guys, I am that Matt guy at Mr. Maple, and welcome to the Bellevue Botanical Garden.
The Bellevue Botanical Garden is 53 acres of cultivated gardens in Bellevue, Washington. Lots of conifers and some cool Japanese maples and other cool trees all around this garden.
Hey guys, we went here with the North American Maple Society, so if you like this kind of thing, definitely sign up to be a member of the North American Maple Society. You'll meet some great people and just have a lot of fun. Now, we love taking you on these tours whenever possible. There's some great conifers, some maples, and just an overall great experience here. This is in Washington State.
Now, Bob Fincham had donated many of these conifers here, so there's definitely some cool trees in this garden. I mean, as I was going around through here, I walked around for a little bit with Robert Fincham. He's right there on the left. And such an amazing conifer expert. He's got some cool books out there. We did shot some top fives with him as well. And this garden is outstanding, especially this rock garden right here. There's so many cool conifers in this garden.
Yeah, stay tuned for 2 different top fives on conifers with author Bob Fincham. I think you guys will enjoy that one. It's got some really good takes on there, and we got him right here in this garden so we could talk to him about some of his all-time favorites. Love any time you get that's kind of hardscape. You got this rock hardscape, and rocks and conifers and maples, they just go together, especially when you get this kind of layout. You know, when you set a garden up in this kind of format with this rock work, there's really no bad places to plant trees.
And I like how this is what you walk into as soon as you walk in the botanical garden. You know they've got a cool plant collection as soon as you walk in, and this is what you see.
Yeah, it kind of sets the show a little bit. You're like, this is what's up. As soon as you walk in, you're kind of in this little, almost like an auditorium. It almost feels like somewhere you could sit and watch an outdoor play or something. It has that kind of aesthetic to it. But
the play is the plants.
Right. The play, the action, the drama is all those conifers and plants. And it kind of, it guides you through these little paths as you get into the rest of the garden. And it just kind of sets the tone for everything you're going to see.
Yeah, there's some cool cedars, cool pines, and a lot of neat spruces. And some that are dwarfs and some good mid-sized conifers all across this. This was actually more of a contorted Cedrus deodora here. I mean, there's so many cool plants in this garden as you're walking around. It was definitely a delight to go around and try to identify all the plants as you walk up. Some of them I had no clue as I walked up, and it was some cool plants you see for the first time. Here we've got a Pinus carstens there, sometimes called Karsten's Winter Gold. Gives some of that bright yellow color during those fall to winter, and that yellow just continues to brighten up throughout those winter months.
Yeah, there's some Where's Waldo going on here too. You just saw Talon Buckholtz and his wife walk by. Like I said, Bob Fincham. So the whole Maple Society was here. So you may see some characters in the background that you may recognize from other things. Tim and I were just having a blast running around checking out this garden. Sean and Corbin came with us on this trip, so they're doing some camera work, but they're also just kind of going around checking out these conifers, checking out the maples in this garden, and just everything it had to offer. Now, we were here on kind of an overcast, a little bit dreary day, which can be kind of the perfect setup, especially in the Pacific Northwest, to come out and view some gardens. You kind of get a little bit more overcast. Everything tends to glow just perfectly.
Now, we were visiting here with the North American branch of the Maple Society, and you can go to NorthAmericanMapleSociety.org, North American Maple Society.org, and become a member today. They've got some cool meetings. They've got a quarterly. It's a great way to find other people who love maples. Such a fun group of people, and you always go while you're with those cool people to go visit cool plants.
Now, we don't get anything for that. Tim and I are both former presidents, but I will tell you, I was a little pleased when Bill told me that Tim and I had signed up over 20 people last year, so I think we're the reigning champions on getting you guys to join. I think we signed up close to 20 people in 2023. So definitely check it out, guys. In 2024, it's a great organization to be a part of. And you get to go to cool things. Now, it's awesome if you do and you don't travel with them, but go to the meetings. That's the best part. You get to meet people. My favorite part of the meetings are half the time, hanging out at the restaurant, riding on the bus, hanging out with just cool people. I spent a lot of time talking to Meet 'em a lot when we were riding over here and just getting to know him better. It's a fun group of people, and you'll really enjoy the camaraderie you get with people that, they're plant geeks like you are. So great group of people. And, when you got great food, great plants, and great people, it's hard to beat that for a weekend.
I think coming up on the right, there's a Hortsman Silberlock on the right. That's actually one of the Tanima no Yukis in the garden. And everywhere you look, there's just so many cool conifers. And then there's maples mixed in with that. And that's the thing I appreciate about this garden, is it has a good mixture of a lot of different plants. And the more you walk around these pathways, you see a lot of fun plants all around.
Actually, a nice little restaurant coffee shop in there. I dipped in there and got an energy drink and some coffee.
Hey, I didn't film this, but there's a frog.
yeah. Whoever filmed this was sucking up to Tim, putting the frogs in there. Even I liked how the drains even turned into an artwork here. Like the grooves in the sidewalk there were cut to kind of drain into that specific little pond. So much going on here, so much attention to detail. And when you get that going on, it really just brings the whole garden up. Now, this is part of the Asian garden that we walked into. Has a little bit more of a Japanese style aesthetic. So there's a part of a tea garden, and there's some different Japanese maples in this area. We were a little early in this garden for perfect fall color. I think if we'd have got here about 3 weeks later, we could hit some of the prime colors, but really gives you that Japan aesthetic. Like you feel like you've been to a garden in Japan. All the old trees, all the mature trees starting to change.
And that red dragon had such a good structure right there. I mean, you could see that it'd been there for quite a while, grew in that spot for quite a while, and those branches, the way they just twisted and curved, you could really tell the age on that lace leaf.
There's a lot of other great plants in here. There's a lot of textures that are brought about from azaleas, ferns, rhododendrons that are kind of mixed into this garden. And, you know, I love when a garden fills itself up. You leave less room for weeds. You leave better, you know, overall garden space when you kind of fill things in. Like you've painted a full picture then. I love how peaceful and relaxing the waterworks always are in Japanese gardens. I mean, if you have a Japanese garden, you have to have some of that water sound going on. It's such an essential part of the relaxation. It's such an essential part of being in the garden is hearing that water movement.
Yeah, I think just being able to experience that aspect of the garden, it just adds so much to it. The water is a key component in Japanese gardening. And if you're building your own garden in your yard, think about adding a waterfall or some water features that can really draw people into your garden and experience that in that unique way.
Really nice Acer triforum here on the left. There's some older Acer griseums in this garden. Now, one thing I think about when I think about this garden is how well the paths are laid out. We're going to be building kind of a bigger arboretum style place to put a lot of our stock plants in. And I really get inspiration from places like this because it makes me want to build the pathway first. Like this pathway really epically leads you through this garden. Like you can't miss aspects of this garden when you stay on the path. And it creates all that movement. It takes you around places and it's such an important part of it. You know, a good walkway and a good pathway are almost like the first steps to building a garden like this.
And then I think next would probably be the hardscaping and then your water features. Mm-hmm. And then lots of Japanese maples.
right. More than they even have here. We'll be adding a lot. Now, incredible gardens here. There's some older plants. There's some species in this garden. Just so many different interesting things going on. That they really, you know, have a perfect climate for a lot of these plants too. Here's an older, more mature snake bark. And I love when snake barks get some caliper to them. You can really appreciate the bark because it almost gets pulpy like. I believe this was a big white tigress.
Yeah, this was a really large snake bark maple. It had some really nice white striping on the bark itself. My first trip to Bellevue Botanical Garden with the maple study, I was allowed to collect some seed on this tree. I mean, it is a really showy specimen with that white bark. You normally get some nice striations on snake barks anyways, but this one is especially showy.
I love when you get mature ones. Like you get some age to a snake bark. Like people enjoy them in smaller sizes. But I mean, you really have just so much more splendor to them when they get that larger caliper. The bark just has another, almost like it doesn't look real. It looks like you have to go up and touch it. Like it's got that puffy pulpiness to it. You just kind of have to go up and put your hand on a big snake bark and feel, you know, they're a little waxy. They're just different. It just feels like something completely otherworldly.
And I actually believe this might have been a Cerstophyllum japonicum.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I remember walking through this area and smelling those. Now, interesting thing about the Katsura trees, it's a genetic trait. So I was talking to Dr. Richard Olson at the National Arboretum one time, and there's a certain percentage of people who don't smell Katsura trees in the fall. So some people will completely not smell it. For most people, you know, Cerstophyllum are going to kind of smell a sweet, soft cotton candy-like smell as they're going on
like
their
a
fall
burnt
color.
sugar.
Yeah, it's a very pleasant smell. It's not overwhelming. But it's a nice smell but some people can't smell it at all. So genetically, some people just completely walk up into that and it's just completely normal smelling.
So this is an Acer Grisham X hybrid, and I believe this is actually cinnamon flake.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you rarely see those this kind of size. That's a big one. In the fall, this will get really nice reddish oranges to it. Cinnamon flake gets a little bit more orange to it than Acer Grisium.
And that is a hybrid with the Nico maple, Acer nicoense, and Acer grisham.
Love the 3 flower maples. They really just do something interesting. We've offered Triflorum and Grisium, and then Waxmanii here at MrMaple. So many of the hybrids, I'd like to get some more involved in that and definitely be offering more rare types of your, Acer Grisium style bark plants.
But as you walk around this garden, there's so many different trees that captivate you as you go around. On the left here, that's actually just a Circes. You've got a redbud over there just showing some fall color. There's so many cool plants around this garden, and the more you go around this garden, you can appreciate each of the individual plants, but the collection as a whole. It's a very well laid out garden that uses collections of plants, but has also provided lots of walking paths for the people that may just, want to stroll through the park.
They did a great job of planting these mixed borders too that kind of give you, a little bit to see over into the trees. So it's not just a complete forest. You actually have a lot going on. Those grasses that were behind us, the hostas. The hostas were kind of done this time of the year, but a lot of these plants, they just provide texture and color for the rest of the garden, and they make it so that you're not looking, just directly into a wall of trees.
I was confused. Is this a hobbit house in the ground?
I don't know. We'll have to dig in there and check.
I was like, what in the world is there a path here to this little house that has a tiny door that I could clearly never fit in?
The groundhogs are getting fancy up here in Washington State.
But this garden not only has your typical pathways, but it also has lots of little rooms that you can walk off and enjoy and have a little private moment in the garden by yourself.
That's one of my favorite aspects of Chinese gardening. I'd like to get out to some different Chinese gardens and talk about that some more. But I think really good gardens, they have different rooms to them. So you can walk into different places and you kind of get different emotions, different feelings, different looks to each little room. And I love when gardens are kind of partitioned off a little bit like that. Big Dawn Redwood right here. Beautiful plant. I like to just sit down in a garden like this too. I'll walk off on my own a little bit, find me a nice bench where nobody's visiting, and just kind of soak it all in, listen to the sounds. We're starting to get a little bit of rainfall while we're in this garden, not much, but it just kind of added to the ambiance. It wasn't super rainy, but it was overcast and foggy. Made for a very relaxing time.
And this is one of those pathways off the main trail, and you start to go up through here and enjoy this little ambiance of this little room, these little different rooms in the garden themselves. I believe, you start to see some more Japanese maples around in this part, and even some Japanese Stordia are over to our right. There are cool plants all around this garden, but every single aspect of this tree is used in the garden, and so it's not like there's a collection of trees. They really thought this out really well.
I would say Stewartia pseudocamellia are underused in American Japanese gardens. They're a native plant in Japan. They're giving you bark interest. They're giving you flowering interest. They're giving you fall color. It's hard to beat what Stewartia provide in the landscape. And I think if you're creating, more of a Japanese style garden, you should definitely think about incorporating some Stewartia pseudocamellia. They really do everything. They're kind of a super plant.
This must be someone else's video, not the video I recorded up here, because as I walked around that corner, there was a girl and a guy making out on that bench. So this clearly was not.
Way to interrupt them, Tim.
And they got up and walked away. I was like, that's gonna be interesting on video.
Sorry, the next part of this video will be censored.
But this room's got a lot of different. This garden's got a lot of different rooms and a lot of different places where you can just enjoy this unique garden. Everywhere you turn, it's different. Here as you're walking up, you're seeing lots of evergreens. You're seeing a lot of things that make you think of the Pacific Northwest. When a second ago we were in a Japanese garden,
right?
And so everything's got its own different themes, but it flows into that. You don't know that you're in a different room until you're in that room.
Yeah, excellent use of some natives here. Really giving that high canopy. I think had we been about 3 weeks later, we'd have got perfect fall color. Can't ever really exactly plan fall color. It's one of those things where nature just kind of decides when they want to change. You can enjoy it as much as you want, but it's always 2 to 3 weeks, kind of different each year, it feels like.
And here we're checking out another snake bark. I mean, you see the snake bark and the striations on this bark. I mean, even this one here, you can really appreciate how it really looks like snake skin.
I love that. That is one of my favorite things when they get big. You saw him touching it. You have to go up and touch it. It's just so weird. It's such a unique plant when it gets like that. Now, another thing I love about snake barks, I love how the the seeds of samaras hang down in tassels. So you kind of get that tassel flower effect to them.
Yeah, it's like a chain.
Yeah, it's like a little wind chime almost. Like it just gives it something ornamental about the seed that's so unique to snake barks.
Now, seeds on trees can be vary from year to year. Some years you may have a huge amount of seed. Other years you may not. It's kind of like the fruit industry, though. I mean, some years you've got a big apple crop and some years you don't. We're here in Henderson County, North Carolina, where there's a lot of apples in our area, and they're always talking about how's the apple crop doing. And it sort of coincides with the Japanese maple seeds. You often see that, often years when they are having a good crop there, we may have a good crop of seeds as well.
Going back up in this tea garden a little bit, just a beautiful area, a lot of shade going on up here.
I believe this is actually maybe called the Yao Garden here. I mean, this is getting into more of what they would think is a traditional Japanese garden here at the Bellevue Botanical Garden.
Some goofy guy over here filming on the right. How about all the stone, man? They had so much great stone placed in there. Whenever you can get stone in your garden like that, I mean, they just don't make enough stone for gardens and rock and moss. I mean, you get that all together and you have such a starting place for just a foundation for your plants. Everything's going to look great next to stone.
And you can tell that it's been there for quite a while as the moss is growing on it. I don't know if they planted the moss on top of that, but if they did a fantastic job. I mean, when you add that moss on top of the stone, it just gives an aged appearance. And just adds to that feel of that Japanese garden. Hey, they're talking about water in the garden on the sign. We were talking about that earlier, how important that is in the garden. I mean, it really is such a key component. It adds so much in the garden itself. It's one thing that people often forget is adding the water in the garden. So it's cool that they even put a sign out there trying to educate the public. And that's often what we're looking at gardens is they're not only collections, they're not only ways that people can go out there and enjoy, but it's educating people on what they can grow in their area. A lot of locals will be using this garden. And again, right there, they're educating people and saying, hey, look at water as a key component.
Man, I just love the pathways. It makes me want to create more pathways. Like as I think about ways I want to lay out my own arboretum eventually, and maybe one day we can have kind of a Mr. Maple world here where you can tour through some of our stocks. We've got some land near here Tim and I are laying out, and it's got a lot of elevation changes, but the thing I envy are all the paths. I look at a garden like this and I think you got to have ways to get to the cool plants, and it's very well laid out. Like there's so many different things you can get to, and then offshoots from that to go and explore. And I think that's really one of the keys to a great arboretum. How the flow is. You can kind of get through everything, but you can find these other extra little areas to get lost in.
One thing that I thought was interesting is how they use this boardwalk. I mean, the boardwalk raises you up a little bit, allows you to get into a wetter spot in the garden where a Dawn redwood could live. And you're able to appreciate those wetter spots in the garden just by raising you up a little bit so you can actually get out there and appreciate this. I mean, otherwise you'd be walking along the pathway and you couldn't get in the garden like you could with that boardwalk.
Yeah, a lot of great rhododendrons, a lot of great azaleas in this garden, all kind of textured with some conifers. So there's a lot of different season interests here.
I believe that's Mahonia. It may even be Soft Caress is the name of that one. The Mahonias just add that unique texture in the garden.
I hope y'all enjoy these garden strolls we take you on. They're kind of shot Mystery Science Theater style. Sometimes we'll be in a garden and it's very loud with the Maple Society, so we'll kind of get some footage, then bring you back by. There's Sean himself. That's our guy that does all our podcasts right there. Sean and Corbin were particularly fun to take on this trip. We had a blast going we originally stayed a couple days at Talon Buckholz, the new Buckholz nursery. Went and visited there and shot some content. Then we went up to Seattle for the Maple Society meeting. Then we traveled all the way up into Canada and spent a couple days in Canada. So it was really like 3 trips in one. Go check out the vlog Corbin and Sean have been doing. They've been kind of giving you behind the scenes view of everything. It's kind of fun to see it from a different perspective. Tim and I are kind of background characters in those videos, so you can kind of see it from their eyes a little bit. We had a blast just traveling, going to so many different things. You forget, you saw so many things at once. You go back through and you see something like this, you realize how beautiful it was at the time, and you're like, wow, we just did so many things on this trip. It was a blitz of awesome.
And here we've got Astoria on the right, but then Japanese maples all around this water feature. And as you start to look around the water here, all of the Japanese maples jut out over the water. I mean, that's just reminiscent of what Matt and I saw in Japan when Nakata-san took us out in the wild, was seeing Japanese maples growing out, aimed out over the river. And that's essentially what they recreated here in the gardens at Bellevue Botanical Garden.
Yeah, one of the best photos I ever took was at the Kyoto Botanical Garden of the fall color reflecting in the pond of the Japanese maples in like perfect fall color. It just looks so cool. It works to a T. It almost works every single time too.
I would say that between the maples and the fall color reflecting in the pond, remember catching the golden pavilion in Japan reflecting over the pond? That was pretty awesome too.
We gotta go back and do some shoots there.
So here you see all this moss is growing on Japanese maples.
Now people talk about lichen a lot. People are always concerned about lichen and moss on their trees. Typically it only happens in areas where you have really good air quality. So it doesn't really mean that your plant is having an issue. You'll see amazing plants in Japan with a lot of lichen or moss on them. You're always going to get that in the Pacific Northwest and here in the mountains of Western North Carolina, and honestly, a lot in Japan. So you're going to see lichen and moss on older trees in areas with great air quality.
It has to do with more of the environmental condition than it has to do with the tree itself. I mean, you can pretty much grow moss on almost anything.
Right. Lots of great layers here to this garden. I mean, a good garden has a lot of movement and land. This all wasn't one flat piece of land. You got so much going on, different things to explore, look around, a lot of different overlooks as you walk around through here. It really just adds to the overall landscape. I still think my favorite part of this garden, though, is that conifer entrance. That's hard to beat that. It's such shock and awe up front. I think it really adds something.
I kind of like this part of the garden because there's so many Japanese maples and things were starting to get fall color. Some of the trees, when we first walked in to the left, there were some bloodgood styles. Those had already went to fall color there.
A lot of pruning on that. Check this green lace leaf out. A lot of shaping. They're getting in there and opening that tree up a little bit, really accentuating that trunk style. Not hard to do. You just take out conflicting branches. We're going to make a video this winter on pruning lace leaf Japanese maples. And you can see this one, they've really just taken out the conflicting branches. It's not that difficult to create this look. A lot of people look at that and get intimidated and say, I could never do that. Really, you're just taking out the things that conflict and accentuating the tree's natural shape, the shape the tree wants to create.
You often see these concrete structures of Japanese lanterns out there in the garden. It just adds that extra essence of the Japanese garden when you do that. I mean, it's just one of those, it's another type of hardscaping to think about when you're putting out a garden.
So many old, mature Japanese maples in this garden too. I mean, they really just reach for the skies. They give you so many different aspects there. It's a multi-layered garden. You have your big trees. The maples are kind of a little bit understory, but they're also providing, that filtered light, that mid-level interest in the garden. And then you've got the ground level garden. And there's so much going on here when you layer a garden that way. It really provides so much beauty at each level. We hope you've enjoyed this tour here of the Bellevue Botanical Garden. Tim and I and Sean and Corbin, we had a blast going around just checking stuff out. A lot of times we just threw it on mute so we could go around and enjoy all the gardens ourselves and then talk about it later. So we wanted to get on here and hop on here and add some audio to this and kind of just explain what we were enjoying. But this is a great kind of example of what you can expect if you visit the Bellevue Botanical Garden in the early season of the fall. We were actually doing this pretty much at the end of October. So we were just right before peak fall colors. Some things are sneaking in like this big maple right here.
Check out that shot of the fall colors on all the different plants. You get the water feature in that shot too. I mean, y'all are going to love this place. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.